Hit that notification button. Don't forget to share this video with your fellow veterans. You're on mute, Raider. Good afternoon, everyone. You know it is. My name is Dewayne. I got a video for that. Kimble, United States Army veteran, retired VA rating specialist, and your VA claim nugget man. Hey, we got a special guest today. And guess what we're doing? Get to the chopper. Get to the chopper. I was intending to get that from you, Raider. But everybody put a fire emoji in the chat and welcome Raider HQ After Dark. We are doing a deep dive into a topic, VA Nexus Truth. Can a Raider grant with just the Nexus? So welcome, Raider. Good afternoon. How you doing?
Get to the chopper. Come on, do it. What are you doing? Come on. I'm happy to be here with you, speaking about all of the veterans and everything. Let's lift some weights.
Man, now, are you doing that or you got like a program or something?
No, I'm just doing that. That's
really?
It's a voice, yeah.
Oh, man.
I'm good at impersonations.
Okay. You need to be on TV, man, if you doing that. I thought, I got a little stream deck, so I hit like a little button in it,
Oh, no.
You said, get to the chopper. That's like
I'm here with Dewayne Kimble, and he is a man, the myth, the living legend, type thing. I don't know.
Man, you got to get on TV, man. You like Godfrey, that comedian, and he does Trump. He did Arnold Schwarzenegger. He does Denzel, Kevin Hart. I mean, he just does a lot of different comedians. So
it got me in trouble in basic training because I do my drills and my drill sergeants, and I would impersonate them and go, toe the line, and then everybody would toe the line, and then they'd be like, where's the drill sergeant? I just do stupid stuff. I was a 68 Zulu combat comedian type thing.
Oh, okay.
I was a character in the service.
Well, can you do the I can't think of he was an actual Marine drill sergeant, but he played in a Full Metal Jacket, and he said, who said that? What cocksucker, twinkle toe cocksucker just signed his own death warrant?
Yeah, I can if I watch a lot of, if I watch them a lot and get the tones down, I can do it, but I can't do it off the top of my head.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that. But yeah, so we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about can a Raider. We'll talk about some other stuff. We'll get into some Q&A here as well. But can a Raider grant just based off a Nexus, nothing else, just a Nexus statement? Because Raider, I get a lot of comments. I try to answer. I get up early in the morning and I try to answer all of my comments that people leave me on YouTube. And what I found out, the veterans are paying a few $100 just for a Nexus statement alone. And I've been out of rating for a while now, but I try to go into the M21-1, -4, -5, and just, try to stay up to date on any updates that they have, and, constantly in the 38 CFR. So first question, can you break down if a veteran claims, let's just say migraines, and they were actually treated in service for migraines, and they're claiming a direct service connection, and they just submit a Nexus, what would most Raiders or what are Raiders supposed to do? And then I'll come back and I'll tell you how I would do it or how I was trained to do it at that time.
I think that the first thing that I need to kind of address with this is that there's an entire, there's the 3-stage development process that happens before the Raider even touches it. So there's a lot of room for shenanigans to happen before that even before a Raider even knows that that claim exists, right? So typically we would be at the mercy of the VSR based upon the condition that is claimed. So if the condition's not a presumptive condition, and we are missing, let's say element 1, which is the current diagnosis, then that would not get an examination for the DBQ, which is required to kind of, assess the how I'm blanking on the word here, but how severe the disability is, right? Because that's what the DBQ is for. So unfortunately, to answer your question, it would depend on what the VSR does. If the VSR sends the veteran for an examination to get points, to feed their
Mhm.
quality and production, then the natural process will happen. So you'll still have to go to an examination. So the answer in that scenario is no, you can't just get awarded by submitting a DBQ by itself, because the VSR will block that and say either there is enough evidence to do an examination to get that severity, or there isn't enough evidence to get that severity, meaning there's no element one. And if you're missing one of the elements, what happens? You get denied.
Yeah. So you said DBQ. Did you mean Nexus?
Well, no.
Okay. I was just
Yeah.
uh,
The way the VSR brain works is those are two different things. So you have the Nexus, which is element 3, and then they're going
okay. I
to
get what you're saying.
listen for element 1 and element 2. And
Right.
if you can't find it, then so it is a misconception among a lot of veterans that the raters, do all this touching and do all this stuff, and they typically don't. There's like 3 stages of development that happen before that rater even kind of
Yeah.
messes with it.
I know back when I rated, we VSRs were not scheduling CMP exams, not until I think like last couple of years before I retired, and then it was basically um, if I decided to schedule an exam, I wouldn't get any points for it. So a lot of raters are like, unless I just have the time and I'm up on my points, I'm not scheduling any exams. But in that case, I know when I was trained was if the Nexus statement is good to go, request the CMP exam, but don't ask for the medical opinion. I think it sounds like they've probably gotten away from that now, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, so the process is kind of flipped on its head from whenever you were rating, in
Mhm.
that the VSRs are typically they're hunting for element 1 and element 2. And they're exclusively the ones that are doing exams these days. Raters sometimes can do exams, but it's not the norm. Like,
Right.
and typically, if a rater's doing an exam, then something has failed in the entire development process, because that review for examination should happen before the rater even gets it. So typically there's 2 different assessments that happen for examination. There's the first one that happens with the VSR,
Mm.
in which they go, okay, is there a current diagnosis, and what theories did the veteran claim, and what theories could potentially be open for this disability. Like if the veteran claims hypertension, one of the first things that the VSR should look for is, when did they serve? Are they Vietnam era? Because that
Mhm.
could be presumption for Agent Orange. So there's this entire assessment that happens. And this assessment, if done right, means that all the medical opinions will go to the examiners to get the examination, unless there is a private DBQ for something.
Yeah.
And
Now,
then, yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's fine.
Okay.
I was done.
Yeah. And what I'm about to tell you, you probably be like, you all used to do it this way. When I first started requesting CMP exams, we started in June. We went to Baltimore for training in July for the 2-week training. We came back and we were in training all the way up until October. And I think for the month, end of September, all October, that's all we did. Look through, because of paper files back then,
Yeah,
look
yeah.
through the records and request exams. So I got really good. And one of the things they told us, the veteran does not have to have a diagnosis. If you see it in service, go ahead and request it, and the examiner could give a diagnosis. And I think about that today. And I'm like, if I was going through this process again today and I knew I was treated in service with something, would I? So, and somebody asked me this other day and they said, would you um, just submit the claim, say back strain without a diagnosis? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
If I was going through this process again today, I'm attempt to file and I'm getting my diagnosis. I'm building a paper trail, because here's why. And back then, it was you go to exam, and it still was a crapshoot, because the examiner could say,
Mhm.
you don't have a diagnosis. Now, guess what you got to do? You got to go get one. And Back then it wasn't new and relevant, it was new and material. It wasn't an 0995, it was just a reopen claim is what we called it. And then I think in what 2000 February 19, 2019, they created those prescribed claim forms. But
Hmm.
now I don't care what it is. I'm getting that diagnosis, intent to file diagnosis, building a paper trail, or whatever. I'm not rolling the dice and giving that examiner the opportunity to say, well, yeah, you were treated in service for it, but that condition has resolved, you know. So I think it's come a long way to your point where you said, hey, things are turned up, turned upside
Mhm.
down now, you know. But
And
go ahead.
go ahead.
No,
Well,
you
I
go
was
ahead.
going to say on that point, the examiner can still, even if you have a current like a current diagnosis, that examiner still under 38 CFR 3.159A, they can still filter that information through their degree and their medical assessment and say, well, I don't believe that your knee injury could have caused a chronic disability. They still
Right.
can do that. Like there's no gotcha on them. They can make whatever determination they want to make. But padding your evidence and support, putting forth your best, strongest argument is like gives you the highest likelihood of success.
Oh yeah. And when I tell people is leave VSRs and RVSRs breadcrumbs. Do that
Mhm.
development for them. Because if you can put that information, let's just say for a Vietnam vet, right?
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if you were around in 2010 when they came out with Nemer, and I worked that for a year. And
Mhm.
so I was able to find, put, a veteran boots on ground because back then, the military wasn't keeping, stellar records, like they are now. And the veteran was like, I know I was there. And it was like, hey, I'm not questioning your integrity of you saying you were there. For me to move forward, I need to prove it, or
Mhm.
I can get an error. And sometimes they would send stuff in, like letters, envelopes, or
Photos.
something,
Ugh.
yeah, something like that. And even still, I think that holds true today. I would, tell people breadcrumbs.
Mhm.
Do as much, be as proactive as you can in gathering your evidence, so that VSR is not bogged down or RVSR is looking for this, looking for that. If you have it, you can put it right in front of. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. I ratchet it down to one more degree of like I'm kind of OCD about this, but if you have a diagnosis, also include symptoms
Yeah.
because symptoms can be taken. So I do diagnosis, symptoms, and then the theory that I'm using to service connect it. That's whenever I look at a claim, that's what looks good to me because there's no way. Because what can happen is, let's say you have private DBQs
Mhm.
or private treatment. Let's just say you have private treatment and you do the 4142, 4142A form and say, hey, VA, can you get this from Dr. McPrivate over here
Yeah.
and get my diagnosis? Because he has my diagnosis. And you're like, that's where you go to get my diagnosis. If that private provider has a fee for those records to print out those records, the VA will not get those records. So essentially, you do not have a diagnosis to support your statement that you have a diagnosis. And that's a vulnerability. And I try to address this comes from being like a QRT liaison for so long. I
Mhm.
try to speak to whenever I guide people towards my advice is to make sure that it has the highest likelihood that the person is an idiot that is working your claim. So you want to make sure, and I don't mean that to be bad, but
I get it. Yeah.
that they're new, that they're inexperienced or whatnot. Sometimes you got to hold their hand and you got to hold it tight and walk them
Yeah.
to where you want to go.
Yeah. And that's why I talk about those breadcrumbs because you have people, especially individual that's behind on the quota. It's
Yep.
Friday, it's the end of the pay period, and they need to be at 79 points or whatever it is, and they're at 75, and now you rush. And I found myself in that situation sometimes rushing, and you can miss something. And I think that I'm glad you brought up the 4142 because I talked about I don't know how old this video was, but I was talking about one of the things that will prolong your claim if you asking the VA to go out and get evidence, which they will do, but veterans they don't understand when they put that on the 526EZ or the 0995 instead of getting those records themselves. The VA is going to send you that 4142. Now they got what 30-day claim level suspense, and then they send it back. Then that doesn't mean on that 31st day or whatever they get it, they're going to look at it the next day. It could be 2 or 3 weeks. And then somebody looks at it. Yep. Then they send it to the doctor, another claim level suspense. Then the doctor comes back and say, oh, we don't, or they don't hear from the doctor. The VA doesn't hear from the doctor. Then another letter goes to the veteran, another claim level suspense, I think 30 days. Hey, we didn't hear a response. It's your ultimate responsibility to get us these records. So I'm like, why not just do an intent to file and get them yourself? And that's something that I did, my own claim when I first, when I was adjudicating my own claim.
Now,
okay. Go ahead, Raider.
I suggest to do both, to submit the evidence yourself and also to submit the 4142 and 4142A. Now, I fully acknowledge that there will be a delay of 30 days in your claim. However, by doing that, it actually kind of feeds into the authenticity and credibility. So, and this is weird and you shouldn't have to do this, but sometimes raters will actually, even though you submitted the evidence, QRT goes, well, is that all the evidence? Did you do the duty to assist? And did you get all of the evidence that you needed to get? Because they could have a medication on there that you don't understand. Like if it's asthma, you might be able to see in their records that they could have a potentially higher rating for having daily inhalers. So oftentimes in the current iteration of rating, raters will want to pull those records anyway. Even though you did it, they want to double tap and make sure that it's a complete record.
That would be, that would scare me. Here's why. And I've seen this happen. It never happened to me when I rated, but it was a rater that I went through training with. And man, he was just hard on vets. I mean, I was like, dude, I'm like, do you need a hug? Like, before you come to work in the morning? And I can't remember what the condition the veteran was claiming, but they went out and got some records, and the records came in, and the veteran was being seen by this examiner for another service-connected condition. And there was evidence that showed improvement of that other condition. And I remember QRT telling him, you got evidence showing improvement, you got to take issue with it. And here's the thing. That condition, that percentage for that condition had been in effect less than 5 years. So they don't need 2 exams or, they just need one piece. And I saw that veteran get reduced, and I was like, man, that was scary. And I even, another time where I saw this, the VSR, the veteran had, and I don't know if I was talking to you about this last time, but a VSR, a veteran had claimed tinnitus, and he was service connected for PTSD at 70%. And the VSR requests the wrong exam. They request an increase in PTSD. Veteran goes to it. 70% has been in effect less than 5 years. That exam showed improvement. Guess what? Now it lands on my desk. I have to do a proposal to reduce, but I can't do a proposal to reduce and defer. I don't know. I think that has changed now. You can do it now, but back then we couldn't do it. So I had to request the exam. The veteran did get a positive opinion for tinnitus. So now I'm granting tinnitus and a proposal to reduce at the same time.
Yeah, you can do both now. You can grant and deny within the same rating decision. They changed that within the last couple of years. They afforded that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Defer and deny without a grant, or it has to be a grant listed in there?
There has to be a grant listed in there. Like if you defer one, like if everything's being deferred and you can't grant anything, then that's what we call a complete deferral.
You're right.
Yeah. But you can deny and defer. You can do that now.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not it used to be a no, they would have you. Yeah.
Raiders got errors for doing that too.
Yep.
They got errors from doing that. All right, Ray, we're gonna get into some Q&A here. We got 228 people. Make sure you go ahead and hit that like button. We got some new members here. Okay, Eric, thank you for coming on board as a member. Definitely appreciate it. Vet Cormado, hope I'm pronouncing that right. And Rick became a member. Definitely appreciate it. Let's see, Raider, you had put up something here. Okay. Yep. So Raider saying he's doing his live stream today.
Yeah.
What time you doing it later today, Raider?
I do it 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So
Eight.
I just wasn't sure if we were fielding 8 p.m. your time.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if we'll be fielding questions today. So that's why I put it on there, because I didn't want people to.
Yeah, we'll take a few. I always like to what I always like to answer what I can. A lot of times veterans ask me questions. I'm like, man, I need more. I need more information, Say good morning, all. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for being a member. How y'all doing? Okay, doing pretty good. Can I pay you extra to pick up my claim from the power?
Yeah. No.
Negative goes right.
That would break. The pattern is full. That would break a lot of things. Yeah, that would be bad.
No snow or ice in Florida. Hope everyone is safe. You are correct. Guess what? We are supposed to be at 80 degrees at 1 p.m. and 82 degrees at 5 p.m. So I am in shorts today, and we are putting meat on the grill. So go ahead, Raider.
I said, you know how you provided the basically you recounted that time in which the veteran got that erroneous increase for the PTSD.
Yep.
I kind of, because I was having a panic attack yesterday whenever I did my video, I gave out advice based upon a procedural loophole. And I mean, if you want to promote this, you can, but if somebody were to be in that situation, what can happen is they can submit a 4138 saying, hey, look, I never did a claim for increase on my PTSD, and then reschedule the exam for PTSD until such time that the vendor kicks it back to the VA, because they only do two attempts typically most of the time, and then they'll kick it back to the VA for additional exam assessment by the VSR. So once you have that 4138 saying, hey, look, I never claimed this, could you please re-review this? Because my intent is not to do a claim for increase on my PTSD. So that's not an issue in this claim. And then what can happen is if the VSR doesn't review that, whenever they go to reorder the examinations and they actually reorder it again, that can be an error for them. So that's kind of a cheeky way to potentially get around having to go to the examination. And so I do so with caution.
Right. When I did my claim, I was sick and tired of CMP, because back then, initially, before the DBQs came out, you had to go to a VA CMP exam. That was the only, it was no third party. And I told individuals about this before. I had 4, 2 were good, 2 were horrible. When I went to the VA Medical Center, the release of information, I got a copy of those CMP exams. They flat out lied. They were just, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And I was like, when DBQs came out, I was like, you know what? I don't care what it takes. It'll be, SWAT can't get me into another VA CMP exam. And I stood on that. Now, with that being said, I tell people, you got to proceed with caution. You have to know what you're doing. I know what I did. Was it risky? Yeah. I follow the regulations. And here's the crazy thing. When I got to the appeal, the DRO says, would you be willing to report for a CMP exam? I said, no. I said, but the question I have, I just told her, I said, no. and I told her why. And I broke down, I told her why. I said, because I claimed pes planus. It was in my entrance exam going into the National Guard. It was in my entrance exam going on to active duty. I had complaints in service, and I had continued treatment after service. The CMP examiner that you all initially sent me to for pes planus, she didn't even put a diagnosis of it on there. She talked about Haugus valgus and all this other stuff. And I'm like, that had nothing to do with the price of tea in China. So
Mhm.
why did she do that? And I was telling her about she knew I was sensitive 7, and she was more concerned about what did I do for the VA instead of evaluating me. So I felt that
Mhm.
I wasn't going to get a first shake, and she gave a negative opinion. I'm like, and that's incorrect. I'm like, because I didn't claim Halgus valgus. There's nothing in my records. I say, but I have a DBQ from a private doctor, which is a podiatrist, and he's been treating me for 2 years. And he referenced her CMP exam and how she left out, critical information. And I asked her, Joe, at that time, have you did a cursory review of it, of the
Mhm.
DBQ? She said, yes. I said, so what makes it insufficient? And she looked at it and looked at me. She said, yeah, I can use it. We're good. And I'm
Yeah.
like, so we just wasted 5 minutes on nothing. Like, and I remember telling her, I said, hey, we just had to, what is that you told me? What is the portal where they do the training? MTS,
TMS.
TMS. I said, we just had TMS training about DBQs last week. And I think she was just like, shit.
Yeah.
Why did I get him? Why did he, but I was just like,
Well, yeah.
they get away with it. And I'm like, I even, filed a complaint against this one CMP examiner. And I'm like, they can, I hear vets saying, hey, I went to this musculoskeletal exam. They didn't use a goniometer. And then they get a copy of the exam through a FOIA request. And the examiner says, yeah, we used the goniometer. And I'm like, I'm not going to uh, question the veterans' integrity when they say that. But I'm like, how do they get away with it? But on the flip side of that, that's all we have as Raiders to go by at that point.
Yeah. It's See, and that's the most frustrating thing, in my opinion, for a lot of veterans is that there's so many moving parts, and at each one of these moving parts, the system can legitimately fall apart. I mean, can legitimately fall apart. So, and the nowadays claims you have to brace your claim for each one of those challenges. Like it's a rapids, you got to be ready for these rapids for each specific weak point in the process. And that's what I feel becomes challenging to a lot of people, is because they might prepare really well for one section, but they did not prepare for the next or the
Yep,
next.
yep. And that just scared the crap out of me. And I told her, and I guess I was being a little hard case in the
Mhm.
appeal. And I did tell her, I was like, I'll never. I said, I know the street that the CMP exam is on in Tampa. I'll never drive down that street for the rest of my life. That's how far removed I want to be from that CMP office. I say, because they lied. I'm like, and
Yeah.
that's all you have at that point, and that could be the difference between percentage point or whatever. And I'm like, how do they just get away with it? And they'll managers say, well, let the veteran appeal it. Well, if the veteran don't understand the process, how do they know? Because we'll see things that they don't see. Like I had one examiner was like, oh, I viewed the veteran get out of their car. And they'll put that in the CMP exam. So guess what I did early on my second CMP exam? I parked on the side of the building where there were no windows, because you're not going to
Right.
see me get in, and I'm like, and it was veteran drove to the end of the driveway, looked both ways, had full range of motion on his neck, but couldn't move his neck in the CMP exam. So veteran was malingering. I was like,
Yeah.
whoa. And they were like, veteran showed up with a Louis Vuitton purse. And I'm like, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
what was the full reflection? That's what I need to know. What is it a positive or negative opinion? That's what I need to know.
Mhm.
So somebody asked a question, Raider, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna answer this, and I want you to give your answer. But when I give my answer, I know you're gonna laugh. Okay. Um, would VA allow that for a veteran to prefer which rater rates their claim? Yes, you can do that. You can pick out the name of the rater that you want to rate your claim. Make sure you put it in the 526 easy, and they will send that claim to that particular rater. Would say you Rate HQ. I know you probably laughed at my answer.
I am laughing at your answer because there is no way under earth or heaven that they would allow for that.
No,
Because I mean, we've got Puerto Rico, we've got California, where there's these like suspiciousness, like and this is another thing where I think like those instances of defrauding the government by raiders, these most recent arrests and whatnot, I find that they had to have help because typically coaches assign your workload to you. You don't assign it. If you're assigning things to yourself, that's like the eye of Sauron starts, like narrowing down on you, going, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Is there some kind of, are you getting money for this?" Like it becomes a fraud review on the raider if people start asking for them specifically, because there should be no way on earth and under heaven that they know that you're a raider at all.
Yeah, that's true. I know early on we would that we had our full name on the code sheet when it was paper, and then we went to, I think, first initial, last name, and then we just went to initial. And I don't know what is it now. Is it just initial now?
No, it's signature. Well, like your signature line on the code sheet and stuff, that is typically your initials with your regional office code. So your 3-digit code. So, and then your job title. So it'll be your initials mixed in with your job title with, and then whatever your RO is. So it'll say like the first 3 initials of your regional office or what the initials are, and then it'll give the numbers for the regional office.
Okay. All right. So I know we had touched on this topic a little bit earlier about CMP exams. Veterans submitting private DBQs, going to the CMP exam. I think I know where you stand on it, and correct me if I'm wrong about, they should go. My opinion is a little bit different. And maybe it's just me being one of those old dog raiders. And just, looking at and I was always that person, man, what can I do to grant this veteran? Is it, my threshold wasn't above the VA's threshold, meaning the regulation. And I often talk about this, and I've talked about the different regulations that govern it. And I tell people, look, if you decide to go, just know, what scenarios, what could happen. If you decide not to go, know what scenarios could happen as well, but also know your rights if you disagree with whatever that's listed in the notification letter. Because I think right now there's a huge inconsistency amongst VA employees when it pertains to this topic. Here's why. Because I've had some clients that had the private DBQ in Nexus statement. And by the way, I know somebody left a comment once before. Veterans, if you never had any form of training, you're not going to know what makes a DBQ sufficient for rating purposes. When DBQs came out, they gave us extensive training because, we're not medical professionals, right? So I've seen where individuals decided to go to the CMP exam, even though they had the private DBQ positive opinion, and they get denied. Then they go to a high level review, and the DRO grants it based off difference of opinion, reasonable doubt. Yeah, should have granted it. I also seen where they got denied, and the DRO agreed, nope, denied, confirmed to continue the denial. Also seen where a veteran was never called to show up for a CMP exam, and they received a rating. And then individuals, they go to BVA, have the judge do a direct review, and they win. And in my mind, I'm like, I can understand a little gray area here and there, but that seems like a huge disparity amongst, in this particular scenario. What have you seen these scenarios when you're doing, quality reviews, the ones I just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, like those kind of quality reviews. So, like I said at the onset, when you submit a private DBQ, the first review is done by the VSR. They're not trained in what it takes to do a rating. They don't know what an actual DBQ looks like to be sufficient. Their review is more like, does the veteran's information on their NPI index match what they put on to the actual DBQ? Like if those addresses don't match up, that's a discrepancy. That's a potential for authenticity. Now, the problem that I have with people not attending exams, like that's the hill they want to die on, is that the M21 manual has been updated to. I mean, I don't know if you mind if I share my screen real quick.
Hold on. Yeah, go ahead. Let me know.
I'll share screen and then window, and then this one right here. So this is just the M21-1. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at 413A1G, potential indicators of DBQ inauthenticity. So you've got authenticity, credibility, and sufficiency. Those are the three pillars that whenever the review happens for the VSR and for the rater of the private DBQ, that these this is how they're either disqualified or not disqualified. So if you come down here, the potential indicators of inauthenticity, if the VA determines that the privately completed DBQ is insufficient for rating purposes and orders an examination, but the veteran refuses to report to the examination, that in and of itself is a potential indicator of inauthenticity. So if
potential though, right? Not actual in authenticity, but potential, correct?
Which is in the eyes of the beholder. And the people that decide that are the VSRs. Well, this portion is for the rater.
Yeah.
So if the VSR had erroneously deemed that the DBQ and or medical opinion was inauthentic and ordered an exam and the veteran didn't go, this further compounds. By not attending the examination, you've compounded your situation because now the rater is stuck with the fact that, you know, we had this initial inauthenticity situation and you further compounded it by not going to the examination. So now the rater's hands are kind of tied because in lieu of this, QRT could come back going, wait a minute, he didn't attend the exam. So this is potentially inauthentic, you know, further support of inauthenticity.
Right.
And this is the gray area. This is the gray area that you were talking about.
Leave that up because here's a question I was looking for while you were talking. I did a video where I say, let's put the VA to the test because there's another M21-1 that states when VA employee, I don't know if it said VSRs, RVSRs, or adjudicators.
Yeah.
When they deem the private DBQ to be insufficient, they are supposed to leave a note in VBMS. And I'm going to find that before we get off.
Oh, I've got that.
And I did a video. Oh, it's right the same. Okay.
Yeah. And it's just for the sake of posterity. It's
okay. That's what it is.
413A1F authenticity of DBQs. It's a little higher than where I was. It's right above it. But
can you highlight that real quick?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So in that video, I was basically saying, let's put the VA to the test. If you did submitted a private DBQ and you opted, not to go for whatever reason, your choice, call in and ask if they put a note. And the shocking, and it wasn't shocking to me because people like, yeah, they say it wasn't a note in there. And when I got my rating decision, they didn't say anything. I got negative opinion, claim denied, and they didn't say why they didn't use, which I don't think they have to say why they didn't use your DBQ in the
short form narrative. Yeah, the short form narrative doesn't require them to have to fully explain the reason or provide it in evidence at all.
Right. Now, this is just me. And I tell people, it might be a slippery slope for you if you try to do what I did. And I tell people, this is your claim. You have to proceed how you see fit. Me, I want to be on that hill. I'm ready. I'm on one. I'm ready to fight. You know, and so I would use this and I'd be like, look, wait a minute, Dro, if I'm doing a high level review, they didn't leave a note. So is it sufficient or not? And I would try to hold that Dro's feature file. Now I feel comfortable doing that. Average veteran, you know, you might be fighting an uphill battle, you know. But again, at the end of the day, people, you know, they have to make that decision. But while we're on that, Raider, scroll back down to that 100 miles. I want to get your take on something. I want to talk about. I think if you scroll down in the previous M21 that you showed about the right there.
Yeah.
So
sorry, I'm
there.
look this
sorry.
stuff up. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to look at this stuff up. So.
Because I saw it when you were talking about it earlier, so I'm like, yeah, I want to touch on that. There are people telling veterans that your private examiner has to be, the regulation states they have to be within 100 miles if they're doing a DBQ. And I'm like, where is that? And I did a video where I talked about this. And I said, I think this is a gray area as well, because we have to apply some common sense. And I always use the, regularly seeing. Now, if someone says, for example, hey, I'm in LA, Seattle, and I've been getting treatment for my PTSD from a private examiner for the last 2 years. I got transferred to New York, and now we're doing it by Zoom. Right?
That's fine.
And they eventually do a DBQ. Well, it's over 100 miles. But it doesn't state, and correct me unless I'm reading it wrong, it doesn't state that the examiner has to be within 100 miles. Because I've seen where the VA has actually scheduled, not the VA, but the third party
CMP examiners,
have scheduled the veteran over 100 miles away from their office. Their office is over 100 miles away. So am I reading that wrong? Because I want to make sure I'm giving the right information. I'm just saying with the bottom two bullet comments in conjunction with the one that you have highlighted about the 100 miles.
So it boils down to inauthenticity. If you have an established relationship, clinical relationship with somebody, and the only thing that has changed is your home of record, then that is not a potential inauthenticity. Right. What this is basically dialing in for, and this is being pushed by National QRT, mind you, is that if you have no contact with that person, like you call up somebody and you've never seen them before in your life, and they lived greater than 100 miles away from you, then this is where the VSR and the rater will start looking at that 100 miles. Now, within this authenticity assessment of your private DBQ, there are a lot of flavors to this. People can inject their own personal bias. So for some, the extremists, they don't care what the context is. If it's over 100 miles away, you're outie. You're done. You're cooked. But for other individuals, like where they provide an explanation, and this is the main point. If you're submitting a private DBQ and the person is 100 miles away, you need to qualify some things. Number one, I am paying this individual to do an evidentiary review and an assessment, a medical assessment on me, because I'm entitled to that from the VA, right? I'm entitled to be able to use the private option. I'm having them do a medical assessment in no difference than a CMP examiner. And also qualify like that the person does not see you. Either they do see you, qualify that. Or if they don't see you, and be like, look, the person hasn't ever seen me. And they are not going to state that they do. They're just doing the paid evidentiary review, which is allowed. Please see 413A1G, like type situation.
Right. And we were talking earlier, and in people, we were talking about and I was saying that about the Dro had told me one time, well, you can deny the claim and you're not wrong. Or you can grant the claim and you're not wrong. And I was just like, okay, am I being punked at work? What does that mean? And you brought up a good point. And again, it goes back to what I stated earlier, what you just said about breadcrumbs, because I would get veterans claims and they would have the 38 CFR in there. They would, hey, I'm doing this because of, and I would be like, and I would look it up. And I was like, oh. And people think, they be like, well, Dewayne, why you can't answer this question? Didn't you work for the VA? You know how big the 38 CFR is,
Yeah.
the different parts, the M21-1, you know how often it changes the historical data?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot, and I was never trained. They said, "Do not try and memorize this stuff because it's too much and it changes too often,"
Yeah.
you know? But I always just looked at ways like, "All right, well, how can I get this vet service connected?" You know? And I would put that, and I think most veterans that receive ratings from me, they were probably a little bit confused because I really wasn't directing. I would put an extra paragraph in there, and it wasn't meant for them. It was meant for QRT. So if they pulled it, I
Yes.
was basically just justifying, if it was kind of like out of left field, I want to make sure I justified my decision so they wouldn't be like, oh, here's an error. And then, I think we had like 5 days to dispute it. If you didn't,
Yep.
you just,
Same.
got the error. And so I wanted them to look at it and be like, okay, yeah, this is why he did it.
And that practice is still upheld. So the practice of doing code sheet notes where you'll put an explanation in the code sheet as to why you did things, that's better if you're talking directly to QRT. You'll see it in your code sheet. Like if the raiders go out on a limb, they tie themselves off to the tree and
Yeah.
they will put, hey, look, I did this in accordance with that to help themselves get hopefully a benevolent QRT if you get a quality pull to where they won't cite an error for you.
Right, right. I and it's crazy because I got a copy of I did a claim for increase for a particular condition, and it was confirmed and continued, and I had 2 DBQs, and of course, I didn't go to the exam. I end up winning on that same appeal.
Hmm.
Guess what the rater put in the special notation box on the code sheet?
What?
They said, "I am not granting the increase because the veteran works as a VSR."
Yeah.
That was a justif I was like, "Oh." I was like, "Wait a minute, what is that?" He's in his personal feelings. It's a regulation on that. Let me go get that. And I brought that up on the appeal, and the drawer agreed. And I
Yeah.
won the increase. But so I tell people, you know, and I'll ask you this question. I'm a big fan. You got a year from the date of notification to submit a high level review. I am a big fan putting in that FOIA request,
Yeah.
getting that claims file, seeing exactly what the VSR, RVSR looked at, if you had a CMP exam or whatever, and build your case before you submit that 0996. And that,
Yeah.
what do you think? I mean, what was your take on that?
Well, I definitely agree because the Raiders are only doing short form narratives. So the explanation on the reason for denial is oftentimes criminally light, if anything, to the bare bones minimum of what VBMS blows into your rating.
Mhm.
So sometimes you need, like, if you want to effectively appeal something, you have to have all the evidence of record, all the facts to be able to
Yeah.
adequately put up a logical defense to that, and especially to a DRO. Now, I'm cautious whenever I recommend people to go to DROs, higher level reviews, decision review officers, because they have that absolute power. They've got the difference of opinion. They've
Yeah.
got the duty to assist error. They can undo reality. They can open up claims as if they're in the here and now. So something you did 20 years ago, if there's a clear and unmistakable error, it doesn't matter. Like sometimes they can pull those things open, right, wrong, or indifferent. And that's another thing that kind of frustrates me where people will point to the CFR and go, look right here, it says you can't do that, so you can't do that. It's like, okay, but the M21 provides caveats to that. They provide potential workarounds that the raider can do,
Yeah.
and it's challenging at all times. So
Yeah. I tell people, you know, and I did a video about the FOIA request, and I had put in because I had did I ever show you my paper claim? Ever show you that?
I think you did actually whenever
Okay.
the
Yeah.
last time we spoke.
What now? Were you part of VA when they had paper claims?
No, actually,
Oh,
I
you got
was
lucky,
not.
man. You got lucky because we had Wednesdays. We would hit. It was a program called Covers,
Mm,
and Do they still have the department IPC? I think they got rid of IPC, where
Yeah.
those were they VSRs? They weren't even VSRs. They called them
Uh-uh.
claim assistants. Claim
Yes.
assistants. And all the mail in St. Petersburg region off, we had this long wall, and it was just like this shelf, and they had these color-coded bins and like 0809, and you would scan that file in every Wednesday. So if somebody had mail, they could, type in the veteran's file number and they know who had that file. Man, I was like, and I went down there and looked at that wall one day, and I just wanted to go up on the roof and just be like, and just scream, because I was like, this is crazy. And I was showing a veteran the other day in M21-1, it shows a piece of VBMS.
Yeah.
And they show a link like 526EZ, and people like, hey, how can a raider miss stuff? I'm like, you send in 1,000 pages, they clicking on 1,000 different links. And if that's that correspondence or whatever they send in, if it's mislabeled,
Buried. Yeah.
it's like if it's a private correspondence and it's actually a 526EZ, I'm looking for 526EZ, and then you got to just sit there and click open, click open, click open. What are some of the updates they've done, I guess, to VBMS? Does it still have the note section
Yes.
and deferral section?
Yes. Yeah, it's got the
Okay.
different tabs and different chevrons for it.
Okay.
Some of the changes that have happened since when you were rating, obviously, we have and I'm going to make an inference here, so I could be wrong, but when you were rating, you had a lot more decision-making power than current raters do.
Yep.
I'm just going to plug this, but I did a video showing on how your VA claim is created, and I show what is known as the evaluation builder, which is like VBMS's practice run at rating claims, and it is literally check boxes. That is it. So the majority of the time, and I will say 95% of the time, raters' current iteration of their duty is to be a data entry specialist. So we are taking the check boxes from the DBQ and we are putting them into VBMS and matching those check boxes together. So unfortunately, and this is kind of what makes me laugh in a dark humor kind of way, is when veterans think about how the evidence is an equipoise. No, it's not. It's never an equipoise, because that was true back whenever your era of raters made determinations with paper copy things. They looked at it, they weighed evidence, they kind of did those things. Now that onus has, for the most part, been put on to the examiners. And the examiners are the medical professionals that filter all of that evidence related to diagnosis and severity. Now, if it's an issue of, okay, they're claiming presumptive condition, element 2, the examiner says they went to Iraq. I have to prove that they went to Iraq. That's my role in that capacity, right? Like if I'm doing PTSD due to fear of hostile military or terrorist activity, and they say that and the examiner reports that the PTSD diagnosis and stressor were due to Iraq service, I have to prove that. If I can't prove that, then I have to defer it back and go, wait a minute, we cannot corroborate your account of the evidence. Please cite where you found that particular stressor confirmation. Where were they in Iraq? Show me in the records where you found that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we've moved a lot of that decision making onto the examiners, which is frustrating beyond all recognition.
And you brought up fear of hostile military terrorist activity.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to someone the other day, and let me know if it's still a practice. Whenever I remember when they came out, and so the our training team told us, because back then we had initial DBQs for PTSD, and there's no longer just review now.
Public facing.
Yeah. Now they told us if a veteran initial claim for PTSD, is due to fear of hostile military terrorist activity. The first CMP exam has to, maybe I'm going to answer my own question here, has to be done through the VA or a VA third-party contractor. But if the veteran is claiming PTSD due to military sexual trauma, a non-combat issue, it does not, the first exam does not have to be at the VA or third-party CMP exam. And they note that in the M21-1. But like I say, I think I'm answering my own question because the initial initial PTSD is no longer there. So if you never filed a claim for PTSD, then obviously you got to go to that exam.
Correct. So it's kind of a catch-22 where it's like, hey, look, these, two categories require you to have to, show up to an examination. However, we're not going to give you the DBQ to be able to fill out to do the other ones.
Right.
So, it's like, yes, you technically can produce your own DBQ that you're not allowed to, have access to. So yes, you are technically able to do that. And unfortunately, those technicalities happen more often than you know.
Yeah. Another thing I tell veterans, always I try to look at the different DBQs, and I got an upcoming video where I'm pointing out in the migraine DBQs what I would be looking for as a rater. And I did a video where they removed on the migraine DBQ, and they removed the box that talked about, I think they just took out the verbiage severe economic inadaptability. And I'm like, why would they do that? I think they left in completely prostrating. So in that video, I'm talking about, what else that their private examiner can add to that, because I've seen raters in the past had a client granted 0%. And in his lay statement, personal statement, he stated completely prostrating, basically the 50% criteria. He gets a rating, goes immediately in for an increase, comes back 0%.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so then he did a review, a high-level review without the informal conference. And the DRO agreed with his lay statement and granted the 50% based off his because I can't remember which M21. I know I could find it where the veteran is not. I don't think it says competent, but the veteran, if they're not a medical professional, they can't diagnose themselves. They can provide the symptoms. So the 50% criteria is the symptoms, and he used that. He pointed that out. I think he used that M21, and that's how he got the higher percentage. Are you seeing a huge difference when it comes to raters and DROs and DTA errors? Do you think that's increasing where DROs are overturning raters' decisions, whether it be denials or grants or whatever?
Yes, for duty to assist errors, but some of them, like, sometimes people do things and there's like for procedural means, like they'll say, okay, we forgot to get you a terror exam for this, for lead causing, asthma. And there's literally almost no chance of it succeeding, but we have to go through the motions. So I do see that. However, there are a lot of times whenever the rater, cannot interpret the medical evidence. The DRO cannot interpret the medical evidence. And competent medical evidence means that the examiner, as long as they were fed all the information, they can come to whatever conclusion they want to, and the DRO has very little say in it. So if it's well written, if their rebuttal or their rationale for why they came to the conclusion that they came to is well written, we can't fight them. That's their domain. Right? Like we can't do that. But in your case, whenever that example, well, if the box in 4B is checked on the mental health DBQ, if 4B is checked yes, and you have completely prostrating migraines, then that's half of the 50%. See, the problem with migraines at 50% is Half of that 50% is decided by the examiner as to whether or not they're completely prostrating. The
Mhm.
other half is decided by the rater for that economic and adaptability. And there is no standard for that. So it comes down to the personal bias and opinion of the rater at the end of the day, whether or not you can get the 50%.
Yeah. I totally agree with that, and I tell people, and you correct me if I'm wrong or if you disagree, I think now it just depends on who's rating that case,
Mm,
who's looking at it. Because I've seen
1000% agree.
yeah, I've seen, people be like, "I got denied for this," and I'm like, "Read it to me." I'm like and then there'll somebody else say, "Well, I got granted that with no problem," and so I think people say, they'll like to throw VA employees into one category, and I'm like, "Look,
Uh-huh.
even when I'm talking about VA employees, I'm like, you got some that are great. They are on it, they're following, and then there's this other group. Like I said, I don't know if they didn't get hugs when they were going to kindergarten, or they got bullied in the third grade, or they didn't make the cheerleading team, or what, and they still holding a grudge about that. And I work with some, man. I tell you, I work with some, and I was like, just don't say nothing to me. Don't speak to me. Don't say
Yeah.
hi. I don't like the way you treat veterans. We had this VSR one time. I don't know if he thought he was like, he would call veterans and be like, hey, I need to call you about this. I need for you to schedule an appointment. And he was going off on a veteran one day. I told you to call. I was going to call you at 1 p.m. And
Yeah.
I really told my supervisor, I say, look, if you don't go over there and say something to him, I might get fired today, because there's no way that everybody and I was saying it loud enough with other people around him. I'm like, you all are sitting here letting him do this to a vet on the phone. And that vet
Yep.
is just trying to be as humble as he can, because he's talking, he wants, he's trying to get service connected. So he's not
Yeah.
trying to go off. But I was I go into meetings, and I was just, I worked in management in the private sector, and I wasn't a yes person. And I'm like,
Mhm.
nah, that don't make sense. That's stupid. Why are we doing that? And they would be like, well, no, you might want to keep that to the vest. Well, you asked me my opinion, so I'm giving it to you, you know. But it was just those individuals that I don't know if they didn't, they thought, I think some of
They
them
have an
think
axe
it's
to grind.
this is a welfare system for veterans. And the crazy thing, it wasn't a lot of people that um were not veterans. It was people that were veterans.
Yeah, I
And
see that in the here and now. Yeah.
oh, you do? So it's still there. And I
It's
just
still a
like,
thing. Yeah, the
that's
prejudice.
yeah, that's crazy. And people think, well, the VA should have veterans. They don't, man, there's a lot of veterans working there.
Yeah.
Every Veterans Day, I don't know how it is at your location, but we had to go downstairs before Veterans Day and take a picture. So Army, Navy, and Army always had to have like 3 different groups, because the Army had the most people, and Coast Guard had like maybe 4 or 5 people. Wasn't that many. And then they would send everybody a mass email, and you'd be like, oh, I didn't know they were used to be in the Air Force or whatever. Um, but and they were adjudicating their own claim, and I'm like, how can you treat other veterans like that, and put them through the grinder, and you trying to adjudicate your own claim? It just, man, that made my blood boil.
Yeah, it bothers me as well. They still have that. It's challenging to say the least. Like a lot of the time, some of the things that really do kind of qualify for this are mental health conditions, because unless you've had mental health, for some individuals, they have a hard time rationalizing mental health.
Yeah,
There's also private DBQs is the current fixation for a lot of these veteran rater and veteran staff. It's not everybody, so I'm not using an
yeah,
absolute here, but a lot of the times what happens is these these individuals will just inject their own personal bias into their claims review, and they will do whatever they're going to do. Sometimes, but your advice is sound. having a new set of eyes on your claim could be the difference between granting and denying.
Yeah.
It could be a multitude of eyes. You need the rater to have, objective eyes and the examiner to have objective eyes. And sometimes you're not denied because your evidence didn't meet criteria. You just didn't satisfy somebody's personal internal bias.
Right. Exactly. I got a question here. I'm gonna pop it up on the screen. I know you'll be able to answer it. It's something straightforward. Hello, Dewayne and Raider. Are you able to submit a VA form 21-4138 after starting an high-level review to explain why you're appealing? No new evidence before the new decision is made. I'll let you go. I'm gonna answer it, but I'm gonna let you go first.
Sure. So the answer to that is yes, because the form has, a lot of us aren't good reporters whenever we're sitting in front of a DRO or somebody like that. So it doesn't. Normally, higher level reviews can only use evidence that was present at the time of the original claim.
Mm-hmm.
That is not evidence that's trying to prove or disprove a matter at issue. It's just it's a continuation of your claim submission form type thing. Because a lot of the times what happens is when you do a higher level review, the claim will flip over to an 040 after the DRO has made their decision.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the problem, is that they don't give you time to submit evidence related. Like if you have a duty to assist error, let's say if they forgot to do a specific medical opinion for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they do not give you time to format your evidence in such a way that it could be favorable for that medical opinion or that new exam under a duty to assist error. So after the DRO has made their determination, their rating decision, they'll complete a VA form 20-0999 form, basically doing directed development to the VSR and the rater.
Mm-hmm.
You can submit whatever evidence you want after that DRO's decision has went in, because it'll flip over to an 020 and you've got the same rules and standards as an 020. Or sorry, 040. I just keep saying it wrong.
And I agree with that, but this is where I push back on the veteran.
Yeah.
Why? You got and I said this earlier, you got 365 days to get that locked down, to figure out, when I did my appeal, Raider, I was appealing service connection, I was appealing the effective date and and the percentage. So I had a legal pad. When I went in there, I had my folder and I had everything outlined. And I went line by line. And I pointed out what I was appealing, why. And back then you could submit evidence, what I was appealing and what regulations I felt that would not adhere to at the time. And here's the evidence. And that's how I won. And I'm like, and maybe it's just me. Why you can, but why would you do that? Why not take the time, if you're working with a VSO, claims agent, attorney, take that, or doing it yourself, take that time to build that game plan. Get everything, get the folder and just know what's going on with your claim. So when you get in there, you're not stumbling and staggering and I understand people, they get nervous, but man, I'm like, why submit stuff get it all after the fact, get it all in at the same time, give yourself time, because you got a year, and you may have some a lot of evidence that you submitted. So you got to go through it, look at the narrative, and rating decision, see what the raters said, give you time to look at some regulations, get on your live stream. Hey, Raider, can you talk about this 38 CFR? Or was it my, rating? Get an understanding of it, build a game plan, and then go forward.
Yeah, I agree with that, because an emotional appeal of any kind, be it a higher level review or supplemental, you're appealing based upon your feelings about it. Yeah. That's not a way to win. I equate like a higher level review to filing a grievance with the union, where you're saying, hey, look, you didn't follow your own process on this, right? Like that's what the higher level review is for. It's not to go to you're not going to my manager, you're not going to my boss. Even if they find a difference of opinion, it doesn't mean that my rating was wrong at all. Like that's not what they're saying. They're saying like, I just came to a different conclusion, which the DRO can do that. Raters typically can't do that. Like if you do a supplemental claim, and there's a point where the rater gets to make a determination, they can make a different, they can have a difference of opinion, like under the 50% for migraines. Like if they found that there was economic inadaptability, then that's the rating. If I come, like if they did a partial rating on that, like let's say I had 3 things and the rater came to the conclusion of 50% on migraines and they deferred 2 things back to get exams. Not every single time will the same rater get the claim back. So if I get the claim back and I'm working those 2 things, I can't disagree with that first rater's conclusion, even though I might 1,000% and go, that wouldn't float with me. I don't have that authority that droves have. And it's a dangerous authority. That's why I tell people, like, that's the nuclear option and do not use it, the higher level review, unless you can point to the, like, this is what should have happened and this is why, and please don't use case law. It doesn't affect the drove.
Well, in the M21, what does it say? You argue fact, right?
Yes.
It's got to be a fact, not what you think is, fact. I'm gonna give a shout out to some donations here.
Yeah.
Dewayne, how can I schedule a consultation with you? I'm 6 months post-retired, and my BD claim has been a nightmare. Yes, I filed at the 180 mark. I no longer do consultations. I do monthly webinars where I explain what it is I do, what I don't do, and how you can work with me. You go to my website, www.kmd89.com, and sign up for that webinar. And the reason why, Shay, Ray, I was doing a 15-minute consultation, and people don't really understand what consultations are. They thought that, hey, let me talk to you for a whole hour, do a data dump on you, then you tell me exactly what it is I need to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can't do that. It was just too time consuming. But go to my website, you can sign up, and the webinar is free. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Go my frat, Little Rock. Good to see you. Go Mizzou. I'm originally from Missouri. When a veteran appeals only SMC are at, man, they're getting up in these high level SMCs and not service connection. How often will a VLJ still rely on non-service connected down? Do you understand this question, Raider? Veteran appeals only SMC are at T and not service connection. Oh, Pierce, you got to give me a little bit more information. That's very confusing. And people often ask about SMC. And I know, you still use SMC calculator?
It actually broke. So there was a little bit of a scandal on that a couple years back where the SMC calculator was not calculating appropriately, so they had to take it offline. So now it is a complete shit show that you have to calculate this using the old calculator, and it still causes problems. So the SMC calculator for what was it? R through, I think they said L through R or something like that. L and T. I think
R
and T.
Yeah.
So the TBI special monthly compensation and the R compensation. So here's the problem with that. Anything above L requires second signature in the VSC manager in order to approve. So you're going to have a multiple game of telephone going on here where the rater doesn't get to make a determination. The QRT person reviewing it and signing off on it gets to make the determination, not the rater. So typically what happens with these, if you have an appeal to where you're trying to get higher up on the RNT, that's out of the rater's hands. That'll be on the QRT and the VSC manager as to whether or not you get granted based upon their interpretation of like Barry v. McDonough type thing and all that stuff. So, I mean, it's a question that I don't feel comfortable specifically relating to because there's so many subtle nuances and so many different opinions in it that it's kind of a crapshoot.
Right. And people often ask me, Dewayne, I got this, and this. Do I meet the service connection with SMC? I'm like, what's the criteria? Did you go to -1 and look up the criteria?
Yeah.
Did you meet the criteria? That. People like, you don't know that? I'm like, no. If you ever went to the -1 and looked at all the different SMCs. I did one about SMC R, and you might get a crack out of this. My coach gave me 3 SMC R1 ratings back to back to back, and I called off the following 2 days. Now, it took me
Mhm.
those 3 claims took me about a week in it, about a week, 6 business days. After that, I took 2 days sick leave. My brain was fried, and I was like, "Why would you do that to me?" You know. Um, let's see. Got one more coming. Sleep apnea complication in service. Negative test results. VA diagnosed CPAP 1.5 years after service. Discharge back 0. How to win for sleep apnea out of service 10 years. Complaints. One thing, and I don't know, Ray, if it's still the case, they taught us if you see a complaint, diagnosis, injury, disease, treatment, and service,
Mhm.
request the exam. So if he had sleep complications in service and now has a diagnosis of sleep apnea confirmed by a sleep study, is he
Yeah.
still entitled to a CMP exam?
Entitled to, the first thing I'd want to do is clarify it. Sleep disturbances could be the mental health
Mhm.
for insomnia body system. So you got the mental health body system and you have the respiratory body system for sleep apnea. What should happen is they should clarify what the veteran is trying to claim. So is it mental health or is it so and so? Because you can get locked into some weird stuff and get the wrong exam.
Yep.
But if you do get the exam, I mean, you'd still get the exam. Like
Yeah.
if you've got a sleep study or you show complaints, you should still technically get the exam, and then the examiner will determine the outcome.
Right. Okay. Yep. That's what I was thinking as well. Let's talk about, I know that there's been these I think it was 3 years ago where they proposed
Mhm.
to uh remove the diagnostic code for tinnitus and combine it with hearing loss, remove the 50% criteria for sleep apnea, and the general rating criteria for mental conditions was going to change a little bit. And there's been speculation out there. Have you heard anything about these proposals coming to being implemented this
Mhm.
year? And I normally tell people, man, when I rate it, we were like the last ones to find out.
Well, I mean, Congress in one of their most recent congressional hearings took the VA and said, "Hey, look, when are these three getting put in?" And the VA representative said before the end of the fiscal year 2026, they will all be implemented, type thing.
Okay.
So I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that's currently what the trajectory is. Now you are right that the the logistics of these trainings will mean that, in my opinion, tinnitus, sleep apnea, and mental health will be implemented at different times because they don't share the same logistics on actualizing what the changes are. I think mental health will be the longest because they've got to completely retrain examiners on how to do the evaluations from the ground up.
Okay.
So I think tinnitus and sleep apnea will hit a lot sooner than mental health. So get your claims in, veterans.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people, they ask me, they say, "Oh, Dwayne, if the VA does this, what are they going to do?" And I'm like, I don't know, because they don't come out with those instructions until they do it. So it could be as
Yeah.
of this date, and so that's why I tell people, why haven't you filed a claim for tinnitus? And if it, in the past, when I rated, if veterans were, let's just use the term grandfather, they were already service connected.
Yeah.
We never had to go back and look at those claims.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
uh, oh, veteran had tinnitus 10 years ago. Let's go back and look and see if they still got it because, now we removed it from the rating scheduler.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, Based upon these changes and what's going to happen, the only certainties that we know, Like the only things that you can bank on at this point in time, because it's true that they've proposed changes and they could still change them before they implement them. They're not bound to what they have proposed. They could still change it if they wanted to. But what I was going to talk about on this with the changes, and my mind went blank for some reason, which happens sometimes.
Oh yeah, there's
Is that the only
old age creeping in?
Yeah. The only certainties that we have are that, number one, intent to files will not secure you in the historical criteria.
Mhm.
They only do that for liberalizing laws. These are not liberalizing laws. Okay, so
Real quick, Ray, I hate to interrupt you.
no, go ahead.
Liberalizing law. Can you expand on that? Because a lot of people, I talked about it and I used it
Yeah.
for Niemer. Can you just expand on that real quick, what that is, so people will know?
I'm going to use a criminally boiled down version of this. It means when Congress implements a law or something like that. That's what kind of liberalizing means, is that Congress has determined that the VA will make a change, versus updating the rating scheduler is the VA determined it's making a change within its own internal process. So like the PACT Act was a liberalizing law. So you could use your intent to file before the PACT Act went into effect on August 10th, 2022, to basically secure element one, so the current diagnosis, before the PACT Act, because you had to meet the criteria. For liberalizing laws, you have to meet the criteria before the change happens in order to benefit from the liberalizing law change. Well, the same is true in this change, is that you have to meet the criteria. So you have to have a current diagnosis before the change goes into effect, and you have to have a claim submitted before the changes go into effect in order to be grandfathered into the historical criteria. They did the same with when they changed the digestive system, May 19th, 2024.
Yeah.
The same process went into effect. So that's whenever they changed digestive system and changed DBQs and how it's rated and all this other stuff. That's the process that they used then. It's the process I think they're going to use now.
Okay. All right. I really hate I threw you off, but when you said that, I was like, people probably don't know what liberalizing law, what that
Oh,
means.
it's fine.
Yeah. So good point there. Now, question for you. I know the answer to this. Somebody stated, hey, I called the 800 number and they gave me an extension on my intent to file, meaning they gave me more than 365. I'm sorry, more than 365 days. VA is not giving extensions on that, correct?
Not on a person-to-person basis, but they did do that for the PACT Act. So
yeah,
there was a formal extension that was put into a policy letter in which they said, hey, look, I know that like if you submitted a claim or something within 7 days of the liberalizing law, or I want to say 14 days. I don't remember the exact days, but if you did that, then we're going to kind of allow you to we're going to give you a leeway period. That is the exception. That is not the rule. You cannot typically extend an intent to file. That's not the way it works, at all.
Right. So today is the 24th. I did intent to file last year. Had nothing to do with the PACT Act. And I called the VA yesterday on the 23rd. Say, hey, I need another 60 days. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Nope.
Yeah. And I was like, you actually called an 800 number and somebody told you that? Did you get the correct 800 number? Because I probably would question that.
Well, I mean, they could have said it, but it doesn't make it true, because you have information siloing. People at the call center do not know one single facet of how the process works. VSRs only know what they do in a day.
Say that again. Because people, they contact the call center expecting, like, what's the status of my claim? If I'm at the call center, guess what I'm saying? Your claim will be worked in the order received. That's all they can say.
Well, that's all they should say, right? But some people like to give their own personal opinion about things, and it's not supported by fact, unfortunately. So Vera is also the same way, in which you can have basically outreach staff, like the public contact,
Yeah.
who are, reaching out, and they're kind of reporting, like some of them worked as VSRs beforehand. Some of them VSRs volunteer over there. Sometimes a raider can volunteer over there too. But even Vera can give out unsupported information that is not true to the facts of how the claims process system works. So yeah, be
Yeah.
cautious with what anybody tells you.
Yeah. Yeah. It was another topic I wanted to discuss with you. I don't know how versed you are uh, on this topic. And I've been trying to collaborate with someone on YouTube with no luck to talk about this. People are talking about claim sharks. Have you heard that term on YouTube?
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with it. I have a name of well, it depends on what we're talking about, because there's different flavors of claim sharks. But yes, I have spoken about. I
So,
know exclusively.
okay.
about.
All right. So we'll touch on a little bit because someone one time left me a message and said, "Oh, you're a claim shark." And I'm like, "Well, define that.
Yeah.
What does it mean?" Just because my business has the word consulting doesn't mean or fits somebody's definition. Um, and they talked about a couple of things. There's companies out there that charge 5x, 6x of back pay. And my response to that, why would you even agree to something like that?
Exactly.
And they're saying that they're giving companies access to their VA login. And my response is, why would you give somebody access to? And I wouldn't even want access if you understand this process.
Mhm.
So when I'm discussing, I don't need to look at something when it comes to explaining the M21-1.
Mhm.
Does the evidence fit? Like we were talking about SMCs. Does the evidence fit that?
Yeah.
It's either yes or no. Well, I got an X-ray. It don't matter. Where does it fall? So I think people, I think, and this is just my opinion, everyone. I think people just throw that out there for um, clickbait, because are there some companies out there that are doing things like that? Yeah, and I think that they shouldn't. But also, the veteran has to take responsibility as well and say, and I get it, because you're trying to get service connected, and someone got a sales line for you, and it sounds good. But on the flip side of that, I think, and just my opinion, folks, I think veterans can do this themselves. Now, I understand there's older veterans that may not understand technology. They need to go out and get representation. But at the end of the day, most people, they've contacted me and say, "Hey, Dewayne, I purchased your first book, follow you on YouTube. Hey, I got to 60% on my own. Great. Now go teach somebody else,
Yeah.
what you follow." So they don't have to, they're not calling me. But at the end of the day, it invested time. So I'll just give you a few minutes to give your opinion. If I don't want to put you out there on
No,
Front
that's
Street,
fine.
but
I
if you
mean,
got an opinion about that.
I do have. There's different layers to this. Okay, so claim sharks, in my opinion, are organizations that charge, and they're not accredited, and they charge any kind of back pay based upon returned gains. You went up from
Yep.
60% to 90%. Charging back pay of any kind is a violation of federal law. Like
Mm.
you're not allowed to charge anybody back pay. Now, I think that is a clear claim shark. Another claim shark tendency is if you have a built-in in-house DBQ section, like one of those companies that's currently being sued right now, to where
Yep.
it might be, even if it's the most purest of intention, it's the perception of it. They paid you, and you're going to filter them to somebody that's not going to say no. They're going to give a
Yep.
specific outcome, for that. That's the argument that can be made by a lot of people and a lot of organization. So it's the perception, whether the perception meets reality. You know, you have to prove that you're not a claim shark at that point in time.
Yeah.
And that's a very hard standard to do.
Mhm.
Now, do I think that consulting has its place in the VA claims process? Yes, I do. I do believe that, and here's why. I mean, I get my I can do my taxes myself, but do I want to pay somebody to review tax law and do all that stuff for me and pay them to have an understanding of that tax law and advise me, and then I will make the final determination? I do that in the civilian world for my taxes. Why not do it within, you know, the VA claims process thing?
Yeah.
But you also have to ask yourself, what am I paying for? What is this particular company's claim to fame? Do you
Mhm.
have a functional understanding? Like, you know, it's like taking your car to the mechanic, you know, is anybody on your staff certified to fix this car?
Yeah.
Or educating people on how to fix this car? If the answer is no, if nobody's ever been a mechanic before, I have concerns, you know, but there are some companies out there that like have, you know, they themselves were in the VA claims process, or they've got people on their staff that were in the claims process. Fair enough. You're paying for that education. How do I organize my evidence to be the most successful? And that's the way that you shouldn't be paying for a specific outcome. If somebody offers you a specific outcome, they are wrong because,
Mhm.
as I've stated earlier in our conversation, there are a lot of bottleneck points where random things can happen. You
Oh,
can't
yeah.
guarantee that. You can try to armor your claim to the point that it will weather that storm, but there is nothing that anybody can guarantee. It upsets me, Dwayne, to the point of just whenever you see certain people on the YouTube, because I watch a lot of YouTube, I look, that
Mhm.
gives me ideas for videos and whatnot. But I'll see people on there that are like, "Oh yeah, I guarantee you, you know, we guarantee you, you can get 70, you can get 100% for tinnitus. It's going to be great." Like, and I'm like, that, come on, come
But,
on.
you know, and I've seen that, and people when I first started, they say, "Well, can you guarantee?" No, I can't do that. I can guarantee you this: if you don't have a basic understanding of this process, are you going to be highly frustrated? Yeah, I can
Hmm.
guarantee you that because I was when I first started rating and filing a claim, and as I, start progressing through my training, that frustration level came down. I'm like, if anybody is guaranteeing you 100%, you might want to go the other way and hang up the phone because,
Yeah,
like you said, you have so many layers, so many variables to this. If you get one of those people at the VA that we talked about,
yeah,
that hey, just a hard grind on veterans, don't matter what you submit. You
yeah.
know,
Ever,
uh,
yeah.
Congress could pass a law say you should be service connected, and they're gonna try to find a ways still to deny it. So
Hmm.
and people that's not, are just being facetious. It's not an actual. They don't do that because I know somebody will say, "Well, Dwayne was talking to Raider, and he said Congress can actually service connect you." So no, they
No.
can't. I was just being funny. Um, so I hear that, and I think people group consulting companies together like people group VA employees together. They're not all the same, but I tell veterans, if you're signing some, read it,
Yeah.
understand it. So example, like I did a video. Oh, and by the way, when I asked you about, you mind if I did a video about the long narrative and short narrative?
Yeah. I'm
I
waiting
did
for
it.
that, man. I'm waiting for it.
And I give you a shout out in there too. So, because I know we talked about that. But like fee agreements, and I did that video because veterans, you have to understand when you sign that fee agreement and you say, "Hey, I want to revoke this lawyer,"
Mhm.
and you do your high level review yourself, and you win, and they withhold a
Yeah.
certain percentage. Don't be surprised. And because I've seen in veterans claims folder, and I never was a VSR, so I wasn't a
Yeah.
authorizer, I wasn't a fee agreement coordinator, or anything like that. But I seen in there where lawyers and claims agents said, "Hey, yeah, we remove ourselves, but we do not forego our fee agreement."
Mhm.
And the vet is not the wiser. So when they sign that fee agreement, they have to understand exactly what it is. I think I just posted a video. I think it was earlier this week or last week on that. Do you still see those in VBMS of
Oh yeah,
claims agents, the lawyers saying they
yeah.
don't forgo?
Yeah, you can still see those. Now, I also was never an authorizer, and authorizers typically deal with the payment status. So I
Yeah.
don't feel comfortable talking about that because it's outside of my knowledge base for the most part. But I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's important that you keep things like that updated. No different than your dependents. You want to make sure all your dependents are updated. Everything is updated because you're right. If a bank error in that law company or whatever, whoever did the fee agreement on we're mostly talking right now about accredited claims agents, accredited
Mhm.
attorneys, because for formal fee agreements, the claim shark side of it, they do not have a formal fee agreement that the VA will hold on their thing. That is going to be a civil matter in which they have to sue you for the money if you don't pay them type
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Now, something else I wanted to bring up. I see these little shorts, and it's a particular service organization, and I guess they have somebody running the commercial, or and I don't know if they're actor or actual veteran, and they're saying you should only work with someone that is accredited. I hear other YouTubers accredited, 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 and I'm like, are you saying that every person that's accredited through the VA and recognized know what they're doing? And I hear that, and I'm like, "You have got to be kidding me." I had a VSO, and I'm not gonna say the name of this organization, but I worked
Yeah.
at St. Pete. This was the biggest, VSO organization in that regional office, and they were the worst
Yeah.
VSO organization in that location. Now, I don't know about nationally. Have you ever seen a VSO put a claim in for an increase in tinnitus, not claiming convalescence like paragraph 29 or 30 due to some type of surgery? Have you ever seen that before?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have seen things like, okay, so there's the way the process is normally supposed to function. Like the manual talks about how the process is normally supposed to function. Then you have the reality where you get something that's a soup sandwich that's so jacked up that it's sideways. And that unfortunately is becoming the norm. And it's on claim submission, it's on VSR working the claim, it's on the prior rater didn't do things right. Like there's so many different stages that your claim can break down and just go sideways. It's not even funny. But when it comes to competent people, that's what I was talking about with the like kind of the claim sharks. What's their claim to fame? How do they instill competency? Because I have been complaining recently about a claims uh, company, I will say, that
Mhm.
keeps putting advertisements on my channels or on my videos, and it's pissing me
Oh,
off. Like it is upsetting me because I don't want anything to do with them because they make statements like we have a 98% or 96% success rate. Well, the VA doesn't have a 96% success rate. So how the hell are you have a 96%? Yeah, okay.
yeah,
Your numbers don't math. Your mathing is not mathing because not even the
right,
VA has a 90 something percent
right.
success rate. And people oftentimes take credit in the claims company thing, unless you're organizing the evidence and helping them organize the evidence. If you just sit down with them and talk with them and they take credit for increases when the evidence was there, and it's like,
Right. Like they did something special.
yeah, I did it. We won. Okay, but
Yeah,
would you have won without them? Right? Because you have to ask yourself, what are you paying for?
yeah.
That's what I always ask myself. What are you paying for? Expertise, knowledge, competency? Okay, then. Like, I try not to endorse anybody specifically on my channel because I like it to be a neutral place. But if veterans are going to endorse somebody, they have to know what are you paying for?
Yeah.
And if they can't say it, if they can't articulate, well, we've done 10,000 of these. Well, guess how many claims the VA's done that they screwed up? Guess how many? Like that's a staggering number of, where competency wasn't there then. I don't know.
I think that because I had looked into that, and when you run ads, I know years ago, I've been on YouTube over 6 years, you could target certain channels. Now you can't do that. I think it's you could target certain niches or something like that.
Yeah.
They call it something. So I think that's, they're probably doing that. They looked at the name, probably looked at some of your content. I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, a lot of people watching
Let's
him
put them on
because
there.
yeah. But I see those ads and they're like, only use somebody to credit. And I'm like, dude, really? I had during a hearing, RVSR hearing, and I was just the lawyer come in and the lawyer is using these big words like he's running for president. The vet's there, and they're really nice because they don't want to piss me off. I'm like, dude, just speak your mind, right? And that's back when it was recorded. You had to check out. You had to go to the front office where the AVSMs are, and you check out the recording machine, and it got the two little microphones, and then you had to take it back, and they send a transcript off to San Diego regional office, get it, all that stuff. And I'm just saying, 38 CFR to CFR. And the lawyer said, Dewayne, can you pause the recording? I said, sure. I said, what's up? And you know what he asked me? He said, you keep talking about CFR. What is that? And I'm like, okay, maybe they're punking me, right? I'm like, and I'm looking, I'm like, what do you mean? Because I'm thinking you're accredited.
Yeah. You got your stuff together.
And you represent the vet. So I threw him under the bus. Right there in the meeting. Threw him under the bus. Yeah. And I said, look, just get me do you want to go to CMP exam or you want to get DBQ from your private doctor? And I'm talking to the vet at this point. He's like, well, hold on. I say, if you get, I'll put it on hold for 30 days. If you can get a DBQ, if not, I'll go ahead, go back upstairs and request the CMP exam for you. Which one do you want? And the veteran is looking at the lawyer and me like, oh shit, I don't know anything about this process. What is he asking me? So I broke it down for him. He was like, oh, well, I'm fine with going to a CMP exam. Not a problem. Given to the end of the day, and I'll get it done for you. And that same veteran, I'm in the hearing rater, and I tell him, yeah, based on the evidence, I'm gonna go ahead and grant the 100%. Because I didn't like doing hearings. So anything I could do to move that claim to a grant without doing a hearing, I would do it. But they showed up. And you know what the lawyer turned around and did? Sent an 8940 in. I said, you have got to be shitting me. And I'm thinking to myself, and you accredited. I already got the rating done. So now I'm trying to call him, and he doesn't pick the phone up.
Yeah.
Don't return any emails. So I called the vet. Hey, how you doing, sir? This is Dewayne Kimble. We had a hearing. He said, yeah, how you doing? I said, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and grant, the benefit that we talked about in the hearing, but I can't get a hold of your lawyer.
Yeah.
And so the veteran gets pissed. So the veteran calls the lawyer and cuts the lawyer out. So the lawyer doesn't call me, he calls my supervisor. And I say, yep, I snitched on him. I told on him. Yep, told him that I snitched. I said, because he needed to pick up the phone or return the email. And he didn't do it. And then he submits an 8940. Now, do you want to retract my rating? And I could kick it back to the VSR and say, hey, go ahead and do all this development for the 8940, and it's just going to sit there.
Yeah.
But I'm like, somebody, and I'm not saying everyone that's accredited don't know what they're doing. I work with some outstanding lawyers, claims agents, but when I see these people, these ads on YouTube saying only work with somebody that's accredited. So what you're saying, everybody that's accredited know what they're talking about? You can't, can't say it. But I'm sorry.
I mean, I've got horror stories. I also have horror stories of that. Like, you can't use generalizations like that. You should never do this. You should always do this. There's always a caveat, and I just used an absolute, but there's always a caveat to there being an exception to the rule. But I've had it to where I worked a claim in which an attorney, and I know we're kind of bashing attorneys, but not all attorneys are bad, like you said. But I was rating the claim. And they actually took the Terra memorandum, doctored it, and sent it to a private examiner. So they printed out the internal document, altered it, and then submitted it to a private provider to do a private DBQ and medical opinion. And I called up the attorney, and it was a big company. And I'm like, hey, I need somebody on the phone. I need to talk to your boss. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, I'm talking about this, this, and this. You guys, like, you are not the stewards of that information. You cannot
Right.
print out that form and hand it to somebody. That is outside of your job description. You are not authorized to give out that information, nor are you authorized to change it. So the president of the company, or the president of the attorney, whatever, the law firm, called me back and said, hey, look, I'm going to let you know I've been doing this for 30 years and And I'm like, sir, I'm going to let you know something. That doesn't matter to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Number one, it doesn't matter to me. Number two, do you understand what it is to alter a document and actually like misrepresent the facts and the truth in a statement? Do you know what that legally equates to? You're the attorney. You let me know. You know,
Yeah.
and I was like, look, man, I'm not trying to jam you up, but I'm just like, this is unethical what you're doing right here. Like what you did is you did not have permission to review that, to disseminate that document. You did
Right.
not have permission to alter that document, and somebody altered it. So I showed him where they altered it, and he goes, oh, I'm so sorry. That is, we will train the entire staff. And I'm like, look, I don't care about that. I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble. I'm not going to, because we're supposed to technically report that to OIG,
Yep.
and they could have their accreditation revoked. And I'm like,
Mhm.
technically, I'm supposed to do that. I'm not going to do that. Doesn't sound like you did this. You just had somebody maybe new that did this. Yes, it was somebody new.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Raider, I think we got a request. I'm going to put it
sure.
up. A request from you. I'm going to put it up on the screen.
What do you want to talk about? Come on, do it.
Man, I can't
Tennis,
believe
you need
you.
to get better. Stop it. How much can you bench? Lift. You've got to lift.
I got the
No.
lift, right? Man, that's too funny. I got a couple.
Sure.
Piers. Oh man, you are asking some tough ones today. TW now 100% comeback. So like that. Yeah, I said the same thing. Panic attacks record has long shown need the daily skill supervision of aid to prevent solicitation. Is it appealed to the board for SMC R2? Again, Pierce, let me tell you all, when you getting up to R1, remember, and I said this earlier, Raider, 6 business days with 3 claims of SMC, R1, I think one I gave R2, and my supervisor gave them to me back to back to back. Do you know how many conditions I granted? I service connected all of them, by the way. And getting that over 11K, people, that's a lot of money. You don't want to be at that level. Trust me. You know,
So, okay. So, a couple things here. This is kind of a hard question to answer because what you're kind of alluding to is that you should have L1 because the need for aid and attendance. You didn't say that you were service connected for L for
Mhm.
aid and attendance. So you cannot skip L to get to R or to T. You have to
Right.
have L first.
Mhm.
And that's going to be a kind of a hard one to get because mental health for aid and attendance is challenging because you have to prove to me, not medically, you've got to prove to the rater because raters decide L exclusively.
Yep.
Non-medical professionals decide L. So you do have L. Okay. So you've got L. The requirements for T are that you have to, and I'm speaking a little outside of my zone because I'm not a TBI SMC guru. You have to prove that without aid and attendance, you would be a failure to thrive. So you'd become hospitalized or something like that for SMCT. The problem with trying to prove that is that you have to, medically show that you would fall basically apart if you didn't have aid and attendance for the T, the new changes that just happened.
Yep.
But that's probably going to the board. I don't know if it's a correct path. Like we can't make that determination for you whether or not that's a correct path. It'll depend on your evidence. If your evidence shows it, or if it doesn't show it, that's going to depend on what you're going to do. But if you're trying to use Barry v. So and so for the half steps, the VA has not implemented that yet. Like that, I mean, they are granting it, but there's no. It's hit or miss because it's down to the individual rater's interpretation. Formally, the VA has not put out something. They just say follow the M21 as currently guided, which means it's a hit or miss. So I
Yeah.
don't know. That's my answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of threw me for a loop for that one. What's going on, Scar Sturf? I still need to hit you up. I need to figure out those holsters and get up to Jacksonville, but I know it's cold up there now, so I'm going to stay down here in uh, Southern Florida for a little bit. I'm sorry, connected for the fifth morning also preventing physical activity and now obese and have sleep apnea and current diagnosis. Is this a viable secondary? I did a video, Raider, and maybe you could talk to more about this because I did it. I want to say it was early last year. And I've only rated a few of these where I granted a benefit using obesity as an intermediate step to sleep apnea. Like sleep apnea is an intermediate step secondary to back condition because the veteran was unable to, exercise and now they have sleep apnea. Have you done any ratings or reviewed any ratings as it pertains to intermediate step in that situation? Okay.
Yeah, like obesity as an intermediate step is fine. But what happens is there's two different medical opinions that happen in that instance. The first medical opinion is, did the service connected condition cause obesity? That has to be true medically explained that way.
The primary or the secondary?
So the secondary. So there's two different medical opinions. Did did the service connected condition cause obesity? So that's the first hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to come to an at least likely as not. Now I'm going to tell you the fifth metatarsal, so your pinky toe, is not, whether or not the pinky toe on one side of your foot is not a persuasive argument to most examiners. They want to see more things like that because you technically could go in a swimming pool and exercise technically and have a low aerobic exercise. So that's not the most persuasive argument because that kind of injury typically gets rated under like 5284 for other injuries of the foot. And it probably is a 0% rating. But that's the first hurdle is, did the service connected condition cause the obesity? And then the second medical opinion is, did the obesity cause what is the new disability? So you have to have both of those fact patterns be true in order for the rater to be able to grant. If one of them falls apart, then the entire theory, falls apart.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's something that I probably rated a handful. I didn't see a lot of those. I don't know why, but I didn't really. I rated a few, but then once I retired from the VA, I started getting questions about it a lot, and I was just like, "Wow, okay." When I was there, you didn't see that a lot. And he says, "I'm diagnosed with flat feet and plantar." I'm assuming plantar
fasciitis.
Fasciitis, yeah. Okay. All right.
I mean, that'll come down to, because those two have to be combined together, with flat feet being the primary because it can get the maximum benefit of 50%. It depends on how severe it is. It depends on what is going on, in terms of medically, can you explain how those cause you to not, to basically, because you have abnormal caloric intake. So that's one half the equation. And then the inability to burn off that caloric intake. So if you don't have a reason why you're consuming normal calories, like the examiner can also take the off ramp of, well, just eat less. Your choice. And I'm not being mean or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, sometimes the examiners do this where they're like, okay, if you can't exercise, then don't eat as much.
Right.
And you have to have, like, the most successful claims in this situation typically have multiple facets to it. Like, I have service connected depression, which causes me to emotionally eat. I have a drastically abnormal caloric intake. So, and then I have this inability to burn off the calories due to these service connected conditions preventing me from exercising. Like, that's a dilemma right there that has a higher likelihood of, success. And your medical rationale that you submit is going to be filtered through the examiner, and they can disagree with you. Like
Mhm.
they have, if it's veteran versus examiner, the examiner will win every single time if they have a difference of opinion.
I one thing that when I rate it, and in most cases I always went with the veterans private DBQ over the CMP examiners, and this is why. In these cases, there were a few where I didn't. But when it comes down to the rationale, CMP VA contractors, CMP examiners, they were given like a negative opinion and only like 2 sentences in the rationale.
Yeah.
But the information from the private doctor, they got the medical studies linking and showing, and they're up to date and all this. And I'm just like, why doesn't the CMP examiners do the same thing? You know, and it's hard. It was hard for me to even agree with the CMP examiners because you only giving me 2 sentences. Oh, I've been a doctor for 10 years. And I got somebody saying, hey, here's 3 medical studies, and this is what they're talking about. And I look at them and they, they're making that connection. So it made my job a lot easier. So are you seeing, what kind of rationales are you seeing now from some of these third-party examiners? I'm pretty sure they're probably all over the place, maybe a couple of sentences, maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs.
Sometimes a couple pages, sometimes a sentence, like just literally, like it depends on the facts. Like if there's no diagnosis, then they'll say there's no diagnosis, so medical opinion cannot be established because of no diagnosis. But another thing you have to consider is it really depends on if we're crossing body systems for these intermediate steps. So if you have, like, if you're filing a claim for sleep apnea due to obesity caused by mental health, right? Like the obesity was caused by the mental health. The problem that you're always going to run into is that the examiner who's reviewing for the OSA has no background in mental health. So it's going to be harder for them to make that first medical opinion. Did the primary mental health condition cause obesity? That's outside of the scope of practice of the nurse practitioner or doctor, primary care doctor that's making that determination. So that's another kind of complexity for using the intermediate step of obesity, is what is the originating thing. If it's a musculoskeletal conditions combined that caused you to become obese, which caused you to have sleep apnea, there's no issue there because the person reviewing sleep apnea can review all the rest of that stuff, and that's within their wheelhouse. But you have to, this is where organizing your evidence in a certain way or preparing your evidence for that, going to the mental health provider and having them weigh in on whether or not your mental health caused you to have obesity. That's a complex thing that needs to happen. And oftentimes people don't prepare for that. And that's the weakest link where the examiner goes, look, your obesity has nothing to do with your sleep apnea. And it's like, or your obesity has nothing to do with your mental health, because they're not speaking from a position of authority. They're speaking from I can't prove it to be true. So that portion of the medical opinion's, disqualified.
Okay. Well, man, we covered a lot of information today. Good information, a lot of clarification that's needed. And I'll continue to tell vets, continue to get educated. You just the basic, understanding the different ways of service connection. I talk about that in my book, and you got to start there. And I think a lot of veterans, they miss that. They miss the 3 elements for direct service connection. Somebody may say, oh yeah, I got a Nexus. And I say, well, read me the rationale. Well, you see, it was completed by a specialist. It's not what I asked. Well, what's the rationale? So you went and paid for something, and just because they're a specialist, you about to kick it over to the VA and you think you're good to go. You might run into some problems, like Houston. Hey, we got a problem. But I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, Raider. Is there anything that you that we didn't talk about? I know we could probably go on and on and on.
Oh yeah, this could be a 24-hour a day stream just talking about stuff.
But but anything we probably left out. I know you're going live tonight, so I don't want to push you too far, because I know you're going to be back on, maybe answering some questions. and stuff like that. I was just been looking at the comment section and kind of like looking to see if anything jumped out. But I know we talked about, oh, real quick, individual unemployability. Head of VSO, tell veterans, if you got IU, you cannot work. And I think it was last year, maybe year before last, I shared a video from the VA's channel. I think it's called Sit Rep or something like that. And he did a good job breaking down IU, marginal employment, poverty level, if you can work, if you got IU, if you can't, and if you're 100% PTSD. And I saw they sent out another email, and I guess they did another video. So can you elaborate on if a veteran has individual unemployability? Can they hold on one second, Raider? Yeah, man. Oh, I'm on live, John. I'm on live. That's okay. Sorry about that. we got family.
Take the food. Take
yeah,
the
no. So can you elaborate on if they can work if they are service connected for IU?
I mean, okay, so yes, you can technically work. There's a lot of caveats to that, but it can't be gainful employment. So at the end of the year, you cannot make more than what the reported amount is for the veteran alone. So it's not for family. It's only for the veteran. And I'll be honest with you that the VA itself doesn't care until the IRS or the Social Security Division or when they kick it back. Like if you make over the poverty line, you will have a claim generated. And then the rater will review it. And then they say that you can have a hearing if you disagree. Okay, cool. That ain't going to do anything. Like there are a lot of times whenever it's like you get a hearing for something, you get the ability to provide evidence to the contrary. But if you made more than the amount, the evidence that you provide doesn't matter because you made more than the amount. We're revoking your TDIU. That's the way that cookie crumbles. You know, it sucks.
Yeah, but you got, I heard VSOs, oh, you can't work, you can't go and make a dime. And I'm like,
no.
I don't think that's right. And sometimes, I don't even push back. I'm like, veterans, even if I say something, I want people to challenge me because I'm human. I could be wrong. I could be maybe interpreting the regulation, differently or not correctly. And then, we have a conversation about it, and, that's something that some raters I did work with, we would kind of go back and forth on stuff and try to understand it, especially if we were trying to grant and like, hey, this is the way I'm looking at it. Am I on the right track? Just having that conversation again, especially if you're trying to service connect. Another question I want to ask, and I did a couple of videos, and I know I was trained this way when it came to IU. I don't know if they still do the training. I was always taught individual unemployability is not a standalone claim. It is a claim for increase for the service-connected conditions that you state prevent you from gainful employment. Is that still correct, or?
It's yes and no. It's a hybrid. It is a claim for increase oftentimes, but it can be a standalone benefit. It's a separate benefit, but yeah. And then you have to go to an increase exam. That's why sometimes like people get a misunderstanding. They think that TDIU itself will be reviewed, but everything that you put on that form has to get an increase exam of some kind in order to do the economic impact assessment.
Right. And when it comes to that, and I tell people in those videos, understand, get a copy of your code sheet, look at the percentage that you have, look at that effective date. Has it been in effect less than 5 years? Because if you go to that exam and it shows improvement, you could be denied, proposal to reduce. Because also, let me know if this is still in effect. if that percentage has been in effect more than 5 years, is it a requirement to have 2 exams to show improvement before
Correct.
proposal to okay. So that's
Yeah.
still in effect, and that's what I'm talking about in those videos. And people, oh, you're 90%, you're not working. How you? And I'm like,
Yeah.
time out.
You
There's
could.
some other things you might want to be looking at first, because if you and the number one, I won't say the number one, but in most cases that I rated where I had to do a proposal to reduce was TDIU and claim for
Yes.
increases, because the veterans, they did not understand that 5-year mark, and they did not understand what is the criteria for the next higher percentage.
So my opinion is TDIU and higher level reviews are the number one causes of proposal to reduces. So like if you reduceth. Um the thing that I wanted to say, like, about the TDIU specifically, and once again I forgot my point, but I guess I'll just drone on. So for like the when we're talking about TDIU, it has to come from a place of there, or the 5-year rule is what I wanted to talk about. The 5-year rule is not a guarantee of anything. So let's say you submit TDIU and we do an increase exam and it show it got improvement. The rater can do an at once exam and say, okay, let's get that second exam right now in the middle of this claim. Let's do this.
Ooh.
Yeah, if you want to be spicy, they can get spicy. So like if you like so raters have the ability to get that at once exam now, which QRT pushes for. Let's just, you know what? Let's get the second one right now and just see what happens.
Wow.
So that can happen a lot. Now I'm of the opinion to where I'm like, look, no harm, no foul, and I'll put in the rating decision. Hey, look, we showed improvement here. Should you file again, and that improvement is found to be consistent, we will propose to reduce you. So keep that in mind.
Giving them a heads up, like, hey.
Yeah, I'm giving them a heads up, and I can technically get a quality error for that, but I don't push that second exam. But there is, in VBMS, we have the ability to do an at once exam, in which we'll do the at once exam, defer back, get a new examination, and that is an acceptable practice to where the 5-year rule doesn't hold any. It doesn't compel us not to do that. Like there's no like, but wait, you can't do it. You need a second exam. All right, challenge accepted. Here's your second exam. Let's see what you got. And some people that wear their bias on their sleeve do that.
Yeah.
They'll do it instantly. They do not care. And they think in their mind, they're justified by saying, look, I want to make sure that you get the most accurate exam because I think you're like, if I don't, then you're defrauding the system because you've got and I've met people. I've talked to them, spoken with them. Like on face value, they think all private DBQs are fraudulent.
Yeah. And that's why I tell people, so when I heard, people tell veterans, oh, come to IU, just do IU. And I'm like, man, it is so many other factors that come into play. Be careful, because, if you're at 90% and you feel you should be 100, there could be a path there, right?
Yeah.
You just have to understand, start with, hey, what diagnosis you have, and where do they fall under the different ways of service connection. But when you drop off into that boat of IU, now I think it's different. I know when I rated and whenever I inferred IU, that means I saw something that would allow me to grant. I can't grant it, so I will infer it in a rating. And some veterans say, Dewayne, they deferred IU, and I'm like, what? I'm like, oh, what they're doing, they're inferring it. Well, somebody said go ahead and file a claim for it. Are you still working? Yeah. Does that make sense? Are you do you see more rating decisions inferring IU? Or I know when I did, it wasn't you didn't see it that often.
Yeah, you see it now a lot of the time. So I hate it. I despise it because people will infer, like, you have to understand it from the point of view of getting somebody's mess after they
Yeah.
So what they'll do is it'll say, hey, look, the vet on the DBQ, it'll say, hey, look, the veterans has economic impact on their so and so, even though they didn't claim IU. Well, then
Mhm.
some jackwagon will go and infer IU, not knowing whether or not the veteran is employed, not knowing whether or not the veteran will meet scheduler criteria, not knowing whether or not the veteran even wants to solicit the claim. So they will do a defer back to the VSR and have the VSR invoke or invite or raise to issue TDIU. I do it a
Yeah.
different way. I will put on the code sheet note, hey, look, authorizer, please send the veteran an 8940 form and see if they want to solicit a claim for it, because we're not supposed to raise something to deny it.
Exactly.
So, and that's what happens a lot of the time with TDIU, because we don't somebody raises it erroneously, and then, like, let's say after that deferral comes back, I get to sign that claim. Now I've got to deal with IU. You didn't raise it to issue. You never responded to us. And now I've got to deny something that was never officially claimed. And it forces my hand, and it annoys me, because now I've got to do this big, long explanation of why you can't be granted for something you never claimed. And it's very, very annoying. And I would like to say something up here.
Is it
The Raider X
about the
Oh, go ahead.
jackwagon? About the
Yeah,
jack?
it's the jack
I
wagon.
heard that too. I was like,
The Raider X says 38 CFR 4.23 comes into play, where the bias of the Raider, VSR, or whoever.
Yeah.
I would like to make a mention of this just real quick.
Okay.
You can't hold anybody to that. 4.23 for the attitude of the rating officer.
Yeah.
If, like, I can believe what I'm doing is the right thing. They can believe what they're doing is the right thing. They can believe that they have the ethical and moral high ground in what they're doing. They could be ripping your benefits away for no reason, and they could believe that. Like, the attitude of the rating officer is in the eye of the beholder.
I actually seen one time where this actually came into play. In the Raider, their verbiage that they put in the narrative, they specifically said, "I feel," and I was like, "Oh no, you didn't. I feel this. I feel," and so it was like personal at that point, right? It was no fact, I agree with you. It is hard to prove, but when you see stuff like "I feel," it's like, okay, now you're injecting your personal feelings into this. But unless you see something so direct, and then Raiders, we get crafty with their wording. Like you were saying, hey, you come back in again, we're gonna tax you.
So, we're gonna do whatever the evidence tells us to. Right.
So be careful. And I would always snitch. I would snitch on the examiner if they gave a negative opinion and there was no additional evidence to show that I could grant it. I wanted that veteran to know, hey, that examiner denied you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, we talked about this beforehand, where I always ask for, like, I will always, in a rating decision, no matter whether or not I granted or denied, I'll include the medical opinion. And it's good for veterans to do that, to say, hey, look, either way, could you please include the medical opinion? Because that way, sometimes raters skim the medical opinion. They don't fully read it. And if the medical opinion itself states explicitly that you should have been granted, or they use an intermediate step and concede, like weight gain caused by so-and-so, you can use that medical opinion in other rating decisions.
Right. And then I think we were talking about that when you showed me the short and long form narrative. And I talked about that in the upcoming video. I think I even did an example lay statement of wording of how I would, word asking them to do it. And you did state that they don't have to, but you can ask, and hopefully they do. But I always want that if there was a CMP exam and the examiner said no and I denied, I wrote verbatim, hey, your CMP exam dated this date, the CMP examiner medically applying, and I would just word for word, I would put it in there, so, And I did an older video, and that's no pun intended when I say I got a video for that, because I'm always saying I did a video on that. I did a video on that.
I love
Where what was it? I just lost my train of thought. Where who denied your claim? Was it the Raider or was it the CMP examiner? Because if you didn't get a CMP exam, the Raider denied it, meaning you didn't meet the criteria on one of the different ways of service connection, you were claiming it, right? But if you went to that CMP exam, and I've actually seen, and I think in that video I talked about where I had to explain that, excuse me, the exam was, I think I can't remember what the verb is, erroneously requested.
Yeah.
Even though there's a positive opinion, there's no link in service. So sometimes I've seen where an examiner, VSR, another rater, would request a CMP exam and one wasn't warranted, and then there's a positive opinion. I get it, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. The veteran just went to the VA and they diagnosed him with this, but there's nothing in service. Yeah. So I can't grant
that positive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And I had this one VSR, man, and I hope he's listening to this. He's probably not, but if he is, he was just straight garbage. Back when we rated, we would have these black bins and we would put the paper files in it and you had to put a lock on it. And I had like a little cart to put them in I was in a van pool. I get home. He's like, yeah, I got 5 easy ones for you. The veteran claimed the increase. I'm like, all right, cool. He said, the exam is back. All right. I open it up. Guess what, Raider? This knucklehead requests a CMP exam for increase. The veteran is not even service connected. I look at the 526 and the veteran states, I'm claiming an increase in my back condition. This knucklehead didn't look at the previous code sheet to verify if the veteran was service. And the veteran went to the exam. And I'm like, and then no diagnosis, no treatment, no complaint in service, nothing, denied.
Yeah.
But the veteran is thinking the whole time,
I'm getting this. Yep.
And I'm like, man, that would just burn me up. And I go to my supervisor, a coach. I don't know if they call them supervisors now, but coaches, they call them
coaches.
No,
yeah, still coaches.
And I said, hey, I need a new VSR. I'm sorry. This dude is garbage. Well, you shouldn't say that about your team member. Okay.
Exactly.
Let me think about that. He's garbage.
Yeah.
He don't know what he's doing. And I was she was like, well, can you train? That's not in my roles and responsibilities. USAjobs.gov does not say rating veteran service representative. If you have a garbage VSR, you need to train them.
Yeah. And unfortunately with this, that's the general state of things. Somebody did something wrong. So the veteran went to the exam. We're still going to deny for element 2.
Yeah.
And we'll do the favorable findings. But a lot of the time, yes, we get the claim in a state in which something that shouldn't have happened. Unfortunately, that's the way of life of the rater nowadays, is that the system is working outside of its proposed thing because somebody didn't do what they were supposed to. Yeah. That's why there's such a disconnect between the VSRs and the raters and the authorizers, because they generally, and I can't speak for everybody, but everybody's pissed off at everybody else because it's like, why are we even paying the VSRs if I have to order the exam?
Yeah.
So that 4.23, the disposition and attitude of the rater, can sometimes be strained based upon the internal process and how things have internally happened, to the point where it's like, look, I'm going to have to spend 5 hours on this claim that should have taken me 34 minutes to complete because somebody else wasn't doing their job.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, Raider, I'm not going to keep you, man. I'm gonna get out here and it's hold on, everybody. I'm gonna give y'all an update. It is mostly sunny, 82 degrees in sunny Tampa, Florida. So I might even just stick my feet in the water. One day I'm gonna go live and just show my feet in my hot tub. Just do that. Like James Brown, gotta get in the hot tub. Ooh, it's hot in the hot tub. Okay. But Raider, hey, it's always a pleasure, man. I really like your content. Keep doing what you're doing, giving the information. I think people can see, like an old head raider like me and you, and seeing, the differences and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we got a common goal to get, the right information to the veterans to get them to wherever percentage they feel they need to be. But again, thank you for coming on. Everybody put a fire emoji in the chat. Let Raider HQ know that you're glad that you came on today. And you're going, what time you say you're going live again tonight, Raider?
6 p.m. Mountain Time.
Okay, so he's going. Is that every Saturday you do that?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
I do it every Saturday.
And I go live the first Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then the second Wednesday of every month with David Piatak over at VA Housing Education. So everybody make sure you go out there and show Raider support, subscribe to the channel. And again, he has some really good information. And people, what pisses me off, the best videos that he does gets like 1.2K views. Those are the ones that you need to be watching. Well, stay away from cola videos. It's not gonna do anything for you. Okay, not gonna do anything for you. When you see a topic, maybe on my channel or Raiders channel, and it's boring, you might want to watch it. Okay, because those, in my opinion, are the most important ones. So Raider, I give you last thoughts if you want to share anything, but man, you are welcome anytime over here at KMD89, the VA Claims Consultant.
Yeah, I think, number one, I appreciate you having me on. It is a privilege. I think like maybe in the future, sometimes whenever the tinnitus, sleep apnea, and mental health actually drop, like obviously you and I are going to do videos beforehand of what happens, like prepare your claim. It might be good to do a collaboration of now what? Like, let's say that something has happened. Now, what do we do with our claims? And it could be just, it's so situational in a lot of situations. But the mental health changes explicitly. What that's going to look like and how that rating gets actualized is going to be new, uncharted territory for veterans. So they're going to need to become acquainted with that. And that'll probably be one of the largest, like, video views that you and I collectively could have, especially on mental health.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. So anytime if you ever want me to come on or whatever and just give my old head view or whatever, or let me know. Always happy to support. There is another retired Raider. He has a channel. We've got an upcoming video. I think tomorrow we're going to upload it. I can't even remember the name of the topic. It's slipping my mind. But welcome anytime. And I wish your channel much luck. And thanks again, because you're doing something that I didn't have the cojones to do back when I rated. I don't think I even had the bandwidth to do it because I was just so stressed out all the time because I never was a VSR. So I was like, man, I was just I just became a Raider, right? And they call it hired off the street. That's what they call it. You got hired off the street, as a Raider. But eventually I started to excel, spending time in the Dash 1, 30, and that really helped a lot. And I worked overtime so I could have more access to those regulations. So I could we weren't on production initially. We were doing overtime. I think now they maybe are on production. Are they on production quotas?
Yes.
They work overtime? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it gets added in. So it augments your normal.
Yeah. Okay. All right, sir. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to get these steaks on the grill, enjoy some of this warm weather. Everyone, thank you for joining us today. It has been awesome. Always learn a nugget or two from Raider. So again, thank you. Hey, Raider, one other thing. You got to take us out, man. You know what you got to do, right?
Get to the chopper. Come on, do it. You got to get there. What are you doing? Get to the chopper. Come on.
I love it, man. I love it. Hey, take care, Raider. Everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Bye.
All right.